Hi, I'm Jupiter Darkling, and I'm here with Chrysus Darkling. We have our very first episode of our Darkling Artcast, and we are here to discuss our art styles. So, our art styles are very different, but alike in certain ways. Um, my fiance actually taught me how to paint digitally with oils, again, digitally. As I am more of a digital artist who sometimes does traditional work, and he's the other way around. He creates mainly traditional work and sometimes digital. So I'm here to ask him a few questions. So, what does inspire you? And how did you start creating your art?
So I used to do photography before I did art, and naturally I'm a shy person, but communicating ideas with models was hard to do. And then I used to look at my photography and wish that I could paint my ideas and my visions that I had, because then I could do exactly what I want without communicating ideas, like with models and other people, and you're all on your own. And then I started experimenting with art, and I didn't look at like certain styles or artists at first. It was just I found my own way with it, and I found it like pretty fast as well. And I started experimenting with abstracts first. When I like got into painting, and never painted really before as an artist. It was more drawings that I used to do. I was always like scared of like paintings, and then I just went for it one day, and I was just on my own in my bedroom, just painting away like nobody really knew like what I was like doing, and it was just all private, personal work that I was working on. But then I enjoyed the ideas that I could paint what I wanted, and it was just crafting a style that I found, and I soon found it pretty quick. It didn't take much at all, and I just went with that. But I wanted to push myself because I was never happy with how it looked. I think like as an artist, you're like your biggest critic, and I think that's what pushes you as an artist. You've got to push more and more, like never be satisfied with what you've got, never like settle for second with your artwork, and you'll find a way.
And looking back, when you started doing your artwork and you started painting, from which sources did you take inspiration? Like which feelings, which thoughts, which music, or was it nothing like that?
So when I started, there was a lot of photography magazines that I had, so I looked through a lot of like photography work in magazines, and then I'd like look at models and then kind of like paint from that as like a reference, and that's how. It was not like actual style or artist that I like worked from, but music was more. I listened to music and I went with a feeling. So if I listen to music and if it gives me a feeling and an emotion, I used to paint it through that, and it was the music that actually, rather than art, looking at other artists, I mean, it was actually music and the feelings that I wanted to like paint that what was in my mind, that feeling that I had, that emotion. And then I started like creating these characters, and I've always like felt alienated in the world. So these characters was almost like you're painting friends sort of thing, that you feel so alien in this world, and that these people were just like me, and I could paint them. And one thing I didn't like about photography was that it was a real person, a real model. Even if you build characters up, and you could photograph anything, because it was like fan art photography that I was doing, and not really like sort of like fashion things or capturing somebody as a real person and their characteristics. And it was more, I built worlds around it, and I used to do all that at uni. And I think that's where my style really came from, that in the first place. It was that I always did characters, but it got expensive with props, and you had to sets that you had to build, and just little mini things. But again, there was too much cost relied on. And again, that's what I loved about paint, that you can just buy a canvas, you paint supplies, and that's it. It's all there. Your imagination is what creates the value, what everyone can see. And when I started posting it online, I was nervous at first, but people started like relating to my work, and people have said like there's a Tim Burton style in it. And then that's when I've not really looked at other people before, but then it was more, I created the art, I had this style, then I found people, like afterwards, that fitted that work that I was doing, and them sort of genres that I was doing,
And how would you describe your art? Like what style or genre?
yeah, I don't think it like, I think the pop surreal or lowbrow art would sum it up if you was to like put a label on that, but
Yeah.
I don't want to squeeze myself into something like that but it would fit into that, I think, with that. But then there was a lot of things that I don't like about the lowbrow and the pop as well, where there's things I want to change that, a bit like fan art, it's always like create the work that you want to see and hear and things like that's what I've always worked on. That's how I've found and I've grown. I've just always painted the art that I want to make. And again, photography, I couldn't quite do it like that with photography. I could, but there was a lot more work to it, and it was just quicker to do a painting. And again, sometimes I would sketch photography ideas, so I was already doing art with my photography anyway. So why not just do the full lot, through art?
Yeah. If you could give your artwork a name, like your art style a name, do you have any idea what you would call it? Because I know you make art that you want to see in the world that wasn't out there yet.
Yeah, I think there's like something whimsical about it, the characters that I've got. But it's just hard to describe because I never went out looking like, oh yeah, I want to do this, I want to do like lowbrow or things like that. So it's hard to find what that fits in. I think probably people would describe it best. Just like when I started posting it, I found people saying that he's like Tim Burton.
Yeah.
So I think them things come after. I just kind of do what I do and feel what I feel. And I just create my own things on that. There's nothing. And I know a lot of people say like, oh, they don't like labels. I'm not like that sort of person. I like don't mind being like put into a label, but I've just done what I've done, and things have just unfolded.
Yeah.
And it's just I've experimented a lot on things. So it's probably other people that could describe it better than me myself, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. Because I always describe your word and call it ethereal gothic. Because it has a sort of whimsy about it. And
yeah, ethereal. That was something I did think at the time. It was, when I started out, it reminds me, ethereal was the stuff that I was doing.
Yeah.
I described it as that. But then it had like the lowbrow feel on things as well. But the characters I was creating was definitely ethereal.
Yeah.
Characters that I was building.
So, does your photography background help with the creation of characters and the creation of like light sources in your paintings?
Yeah, because photography was where I learned how to do the light when I started out right back in college before uni. The first assignment that we ever had was painting with light in photography. So it learned a lot of things. But you go in the studio and you've got an image in your mind, but again, you had to get the light how you wanted, and although you could do it, it was so physically demanding as well.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you've got the model. So, like an example, when you're painting, you can just paint if you want the air to blow on your character with like a breeze look. You can just paint it how you want, but it's sometimes out of your control when it's in photography. So there was like a tip in photography that don't use a fan because your hair just goes messy everywhere. It's uncontrollable. So you're better using like a cardboard. A piece of cardboard, and you just waft it once and then it just blows the air on neat, but it's still out of control. So there'll be a strand of air, but perfect photo that you maybe got, but there'll be a strand of air that in the face, and you've still got to edit out. And I enjoyed the Photoshop because that was like digital art in that way, where you're editing things out, and I never feel like using Photoshop because a lot of people like criticise that, like, oh, you're supposed to keep photos real, but this was different because you're creating my art, like fan art photography. It's like a painting, just with the real person, but you use like a lot of dodge and burn that can give like a paint feel to things, and I kind of like that. Didn't overdo it, wanted it to look real, but
yeah,
there was a lot of things out of your control. Like I say, when it came to like breezes, the way you wanted the air to flow, but like somebody's hair it's free. It'll just blow. If you've got this direction where if you want the air to sweep along somebody's face and to the right hand side, and you can create that in a painting, but it's not as easy as that because it could blow over somebody's face if you create that in the studio with photography or if you're out in the location. The wind's definitely unpredictable.
Yeah.
And sometimes with photography, it was down to luck if you just at the right time caught that perfect with the air's blowing how you want it to blow, but you'd have to take a ton of photos, and that's another thing with photography that I think people don't realise is that they think as photographers that they just click that one camera, they've got it, they know what they're doing, and yeah, you know techniques that you've got to do, but the thing with photography is you've got to snap a load of photos, and you then got to find the one that what did work. The reason why I found with all that you might take 100 photos to get this one right, and again it's down to chances. Like you take 100 photos, you've probably got that one that works. So there was a lot of like wasted photos in that, but you had to take all them photos to get the right one.
Yeah.
And with that's what I loved about that. It was the full control that you just paint what you want.
Yeah. And how was the switch from photography to art? How did you experience that?
It was easy because that training that I had in photography was just. When I did photography, because I never really painted before, I always remember looking at art, I always remember wishing, I wish I had that luxury just to paint what I wanted without all this hassle and headache of all the demand that it came with like creating the photos. And then I just thought, just do it. And when I was doing it, so when I transitioned from that to that, I found it easy in that way, that I was in full control. It was then obviously getting used to painting and learning and like anything, I was rusty in the beginning with that. Mm-hmm. But one thing I did have was that knowledge of photography with the lighting, what makes a good photo, and I do that. I created oddness with the lighting when I was in the studio.
Yeah.
And I remember there was we had an assignment at photography at uni, and we was randomly given people to study. So you had no choice in it, and mine was, I think, Gregory Crutzen, I think his name was, and Gregory Crutzen, I think, and he created these like American like neighbourhoods, and he had this odd lighting that he was doing, and I loved his lighting, and that was one thing along the way that I think I took from that.
Yeah. And
he'd have like a lot of backlighting on his subjects and stuff, and I just loved all that because that's not life, not reality. No. So a lot of it was like film stills, so I like that, and that's what makes like a film. It's not real life. It's different to like a TV show. The film different. Films can be more dreamy, different lighting. They're not real, but we all accept that. And yeah, a TV show you expect it to be like life. But even them things are different because the lighting in the rooms are different. They're not like real lights, lamps, and you can see you watch a TV soap and they've got a lamp on, but you can see the studio lights above. So they won't naturally light it like a real room.
Yeah.
And it was the same with my photography. It's like, when I do my art, you create these we don't walk around with like backlights against us all. That's what makes art and life different.
Yeah.
Because you can't just have because it'll be boring. You've got to make something different with that. And that's why I love all them like different lighting, odd techniques and stuff. And, then... same when it comes to, and that's what gets caught out with like fake photos when something's supposed to be a documentary photo and they're supposed to represent something, and people will pull out, well, why is the a reflector covering the shadow, filling in the shadows? So there's them little things again because it's not real life, but they get caught. Professionals catch it all out, and just even down to fake documentary photos and things like that they're not truly real when they have been faked because. But a lot of things, it'll be boring if not. So it's different again. And obviously the average person wouldn't know this, these techniques that they all do. And so it's the same with art. With art, it's when you create things that I just like to have that oddness about it. And yeah, like, I suppose like film stills or something like that I do like.
Yeah. Like, I studied game art and animation, which is funny because I didn't have an animation class in my study at all. We also had, what's it called, illustration classes, and we were all taught about light sources and stuff like that, but it was not good. It was, you just got the real basics, which sucks because it's an art uni and you feel like you're gonna get more advanced stuff, but you just get the basics. And you already had to have some skill whatsoever to even get in. So that didn't make sense to me. And what my point is that I always blocked in. I never sketched before. But once I went to school, to uni, they absolutely beat it out of you. Like, no, you have to sketch. And that just did not work for me. And, I hated it. So that's just like me coming to my point. Can you explain your process of blocking in, how that works for you?
Yeah, so I block in, but I'm pretty messy with it. I experiment the ideas, and sometimes I don't know where I'm going. And when you work from, you can see something in your mind, but putting it also down on a canvas, it's not going that way. So there's a way of, it's like a band will go in the studio, and I always see a lot of art, like music and art, film. Whenever you've got a new idea, so like musicians, they've all got a similar process.
Yeah.
You know, something's sketchy in the beginning, and it's like a band. They'll jam in the studio and they want to do a new album, but sometimes the full song ain't there straight away. They've got an idea and they can write music, but sometimes they've got to go through that experiment to get the sound, and sometimes if they've got this idea in their head, it doesn't always work in reality. So they have to change it. It's the same with art. It's like, I can be pretty messy with it, but there's like a magic in when you're blocking in, because you start seeing things where it can go, and it ends up in another direction where you had no idea it was going to go in. And the blocking on that, I just get messy with it.
Yeah.
But I always do the layers and thin, so I can like edit things as I go along with the paints, and my work's pretty flat in that way. But that's something I would like to do as well with textures. Like later on, I'd like to experiment with that. But I think that's why my work's been like flat. Sometimes when I look at my originals, they look like a canvas print rather than a painting. But to say I block in and experiment as I do, the layers are so thin.
Yeah.
And I just make things a bit wishy-washy, but I just start with ideas, and sometimes it's like, again, a numbers game. There might be 1 in every 10 canvases that I paint where it just all comes together straight away and it works. And I get a similar idea if it does end up in a different direction. It can be there where I started out in my head all along. But just working from your hand can get a bit like messy sometimes. So I just block in, and I never sketch the idea because I just don't have that idea in the first place. And like I say, it's like if people could click their fingers as a musician and have the song, it'd be there. And that's what I found the sketch is. I found that it's got to go through that process of just finding your way and feeling it. And the way I work with paints and how I block in is like a sculpture. And a lot of people, like, artists that paint... I think a lot of people who don't do art, you think that you just hold your brush straight and you like a pencil or whatever, but artists know that you put your pencil on an angle and you shade in like that. I think the average person who's no idea of art probably won't think of that, you know what I mean? So using your brush as well with them techniques to block in, and so the way I'll use the brush on an angle, sometimes I'll use my fingers like moulding, because I love doing sculptures. So blocking in for me is like moulding like a block of clay, like, and I feel it as well with it. So that's why I can't create work from a sketch, because you sketch it, you've got your outline, and then to me it's like colouring in, and like there's nothing wrong with that, and people prefer that and find that easier. Or everyone's different. But I just work from... That's how I treat my paints, like a block of clay that you shape and you mould. and you get the feel of it like that, and that again relates to something that I did in photography right at the beginning in college. We had this assignment which was line, shape and form, and that's where I think blocking in gets the form for me on that. It gets the shapes, the 3Dness of an artwork, and I find if you sketch it, you've got to stick to. There's like rules there. You've got to stick to it. And sometimes a sketch, I found if I sketch and then fill it in, I found the nose is off or the eyes are wonky.
Yeah.
And you've had to kind of stick to it. I know you can edit along the way, but I just found that I can't get that, and that's why my work's so messy. It's just getting a feel of it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, you have a certain feel, and a certain what's it called? Ambiance that goes along with it. So you have a certain feeling that you want to express, and on top of that, you have to get a feel for the canvas and the brush and the materials. And if you do it like blocking in, to me personally, that also felt more natural. That felt a lot more how it's supposed to be than sketching. Sketching is so rough, so out there, and it feels so definitive.
Mm. So, question to you: what inspires you, and how did you start in art?
Well, very funny. When I was little, I must have been like 1.5, and I started picking up pencils with my left hand, and I started drawing. So my parents thought, oh, she's a lefty. And then one day, I decided randomly to use my right hand, and from then on, I never let go of the pencil. So I've always been drawing. Like, even with birthday gifts, I would get like a box with a nice doll in it. What would I do? I would take the doll out and draw on the box. That was my real gift, the box to draw on. I didn't care about the doll at all. Yeah, so I never stopped. I always just kept drawing. And when I was like 12 or 13, I started like designing characters in a very comic book / chibi style. And when I was like 15, 16, I went to more semi-realistic. I started working with inks from Winsor & Newton. And a bit later on, I started also working with Copic markers. And then, of course, when I went to study game art and animation, I had to learn how to draw digitally. So right before I started school, like months before, in the summer, I started drawing digitally with a drawing pad from Wacom on my laptop. It was hard as hell. I had no idea what I was doing. Draw in Photoshop. But I don't know, I loved it. I loved it so much. I loved it more than actually doing traditional art. Because, I don't know, for me personally, I felt there was something missing in traditional art that I found in digital. And that's where I'm more of a digital artist than a traditional artist. And of course I still like drawing and everything on paper. And right now you're teaching me how to paint. Like actual paint. But yeah, I started from a very young age and just never stopped. And things that inspire me, my God. Music, other artists, fashion. A lot of things that I draw are either like very gothy or very pastel goth, because I love getting lost in a pastel world, even though I'm the complete opposite of it. But yeah, I just love the duality of like doing something the complete opposite of what you are. Like, look at Junji Ito. No idea if I'm pronouncing his name right. I'm so sorry if I'm not. He looks like the most happiest guy in the world, and he draws the darkest stuff you've ever seen. And I just love that duality, that contrast. And that's what I just put on my art, and I love to get inspired by cutesy things as well, but then make it a bit more bold.
Yeah. So, as you said there about like when you was a child, how you started with art there, with the old lefty thing and with your arm, and that brought me back memories. So, you know, I used to draw when I was little, like dinosaurs, and so I've always been into art. I've always been into it, and then, but I do remember watching the film Jaws, and somebody took a photo, and they went into the dark room and developed the print, and I just remember at the time it was just like clear water that they put this photo in. So I remember staying once at my grandma's and I got this piece of paper, filled the sink up with water, and put the piece of paper in, and expected a photo to develop. So that was like, it was weird. I was like, I used to draw at the time then, but I saw this in this film, and it was just weird. One day, because when I did college, it was all in the dark room, so we started out real traditional there as well. And it wasn't until the digital photography until we went to uni, but I used to do darkroom work way back in college as well. But it just reminded me there about your childhood, and I used to like draw dinosaurs and everything, and and.
So yeah, what is actually quite funny, I don't know if I ever told you this actually. I used to do like photos of my friends dressed in certain outfits and stuff to like create characters. Like I created my own Alice in Wonderland characters. Well, they were true to the characters in a certain way. Like the color schemes and stuff would be like traditional from like the book and whatnot, but I would give it my own twist. And I got my friends all together and we did like a mini photo shoot, and it was very, very amateuristic, but it was just purely to let out a desire to create characters and go my own way with it. To a point where I actually wanted to do like fashion photography. Never went through with it because I thought it's not gonna be what I want. But I do think it's funny that we also have that similarity there. You went from wanting to create characters in photography and then finding it in art, and I went from creating my characters in art and wanting it to put it in photography. So we went the other way, but then I never went through with it. So I think it's quite funny that in that we're also like the other way around. Same with you being a traditional artist doing digital sometimes, and me being a digital artist sometimes doing traditional.
Yeah.
So I just think it's really funny and a weird coincidence that we go the other way around on things.
When I went digital from traditional, what I loved about it was that there was no, I could experiment with it. There was no, you've got to wait for your layers to dry and until you paint and stuff. Digital was brilliant because straight away, and again because I had a film camera first, even though like digital was already pretty big then. By the time my first SLR was film, and then the idea of having a digital SLR camera was. That was it. I could just experiment, play. You don't have to wait for the negatives or anything. And same with the traditional. So even in photography, I was traditional first.
Yeah.
And obviously we had to for the course that we was doing, but maybe appreciate the quickness of digital and how you do have that. Even though like with the way I'm traditional on things and you're digital and that, but. What I love about that, you do appreciate the speed of digital. So it was exactly the same, going from traditional to digital photography. Same with that, the speed of it, so you can experiment more. So I think one thing going digital has helped me create new ideas, experiment more, and even the fact you don't have to spend time mixing your colours. The colours are there on the palette straight away digitally. So you can just do that and you can just play about more. And that has now helped me because I'm getting to the point I've worked on digital now for a couple of years. But obviously there's something inside me that wants to do traditional still.
Yeah,
but the thought of going to traditional now, the digital has helped me develop that as well without having the slowness of experimenting with traditional art.
Yeah.
But we're just opposites in with everything.
Yeah.
We start and you're digital mainly and I'm traditional mainly and
and so what I wanted to add is the things that I draw now, it's like I'm so I'm such a contrast of myself because I draw these portraits or sometimes characters that I made up myself in this barbed wire heart frame. But it's such a cartoon, yet not cartoon style. And then I also do semi-realistic portraits of like real people. And that's where you helped me because I used to do them on my Wacom tablet with my laptop. And then going to iPad and Procreate that, oh my god, I had to find my way in it. And it was horrible finding my way back in it. And you really taught me useful techniques, how to work with digital oil, to a point where I'm always willing to learn and I'm still need to grow, but I'm quite happy with where I'm going. I'm quite proud of the things I'm creating right now. And I'm really grateful for that my fiance is such a talented artist who I can learn a lot from.
Stop it. No, but something I do like about digital that surprises me is the charcoals and stuff like that, because I love working with charcoals. And charcoals, traditional, is so messy and you can't make mistakes on that.
Yeah.
And that's where, again, what I just said a few moments ago about how you can experiment. One thing I love about that is there's no mess with that. You literally got to clear up because there's just charcoal everywhere. It's all over your fingers.
Yeah. And
the way you've got to angle your hand, you can't touch the page or anything. And there's fingerprints everywhere, or you can erase it, but you can't. If you go too hard with charcoal, that's it. You've stuffed it up. And it's like the old-fashioned day of writing in pen. You've got to tip it out.
Yeah.
You can see where the mistake is, and you can't correct it if you've stuffed that up. Digital, I just love that, and I love the realism with that. And so, even though it's digital, there's a traditional look about it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of my work, as well, people have said when I've done digital that people think it's traditional. So whether that's the traditional artist in me, but I don't know. But I do love that, creating something that does look traditional, because a lot of digital art does look digital and things, and obviously it depends on what people want and the style that they do it in. But as a traditional artist, I want to capture that traditional look as much as possible. So I do love it when digital captures that. And the charcoals, I love working with digital charcoals.
Yeah.
I think better than charcoal itself, the real charcoal. There's just something about it that feels like traditional as well. And I think because when you're painting digitally, it is the pen, the digital pen that you're painting with. I think the charcoal, it's physically, the pen that you're using feels like a real piece of charcoal, pencil that you're using.
Yeah.
Because it's shaped like a pencil, and I think that's where it really does come into it.
Yeah, I want to add to the charcoal thing. Like, my dad used to draw with charcoal a lot, but he didn't draw with charcoal pencils. He had these real charcoal sticks.
Yeah, I've worked with them as well. Yeah.
Complete thing of charcoal, and oh my god, the mess you would create.
Yeah.
Oh. But yeah, this was a little introduction on our art styles. You can find us online on Instagram under the handles Art by Darkling and Jupiter Darkling. We're also on Ko-fi under Art by Darkling and Mrs. Darkling, where you can buy prints from our artworks, and yeah, you can check us out. Thank you for listening to our very first episode of the podcast. Hope to have you with us next time.